Well, hello and welcome again. This is Dr. Brenda Murphy, educational psychologist at Sail Away Learning and Academy, welcoming you once again to Strong at Home. Now, before I say another word, I'm going to show you a picture. Hold on here. What does that look like to you? Well, I know what it is. It is a picture of what many of our children are experiencing every day in their classrooms. And our guest for today, Dr. Kathy Greenberg, and I are partners in crime in changing this. So, Greenberg, tell us a little bit about one of the ways that we can eliminate or at least change this situation for our kids, and why. Last time we talked about what is thinking, and is this thinking?
Yeah. Well, I will say many teachers try to make learning different than this, and many do succeed, but not all, particularly today when there's so many standards that must be of content areas that must be covered in order to complete the year and for teachers to receive a good evaluation on their teaching. So it takes the emphasis off the individual learner. But if we think about that cartoon, there's no emphasis on thinking, none at all. It's just the child, and let's cover him with the subject matter and move on to the next.
Yeah,
when we live with children, that just doesn't happen. I mean, it can't happen. We are much more aware. However, with all of the homeschooling that needed to go on with the pandemic, you start looking at what the school is wanting kids to do and the worksheets they may have sent out, and then it's right back to not thinking about that individual child, but just kind of spray painting whatever is the content of that particular worksheet. And it's so important to think beyond that. And in fact, there's so much for learning a content that or anything in school, there are hidden rules. And one of the things I love about Feuerstein's work, which my education approach is based on, is that he's talking about the hidden rules. They're not hidden from everybody, but they're hidden from those who have any challenges in school or come from a different culture where maybe there's a clash between the way that families value a child and the way the school values a child. Either in one setting, the child is supposed to be more outgoing, more creative, more sharing of individual understanding that may or may not relate to content, to the other setting, which is much more of follow the rules and repeat back what I taught you. And that can vary all the way through the university setting as to what the expectations are.
Yes, absolutely. I have a term for that. It's a little maybe, it's cram and regurgitate. And
yes.
And that really is not how we really want to learn. So most of us have never known anything else other than that, and we have mastered that fine art of cram and regurgitate and have become very grade-driven students. And what would be an alternative? Because in addition to being grade-driven, what else can we think about? What would some of these hidden rules be? What would be some of the things that we are looking at?
Well, we're looking in a general sense at metastrategic knowledge, or as one 8-year-old boy that was working with a teacher using CEA, he called them the rules of life, of what is it that I can draw from to build strategies to meet my needs in a given situation. Not some rule that the teacher or the parent or other family member gave to me, but one that I come up with myself once I get a good understanding of what all this metastrategic knowledge is. So I have a repertoire to draw from. What we learned early on as teachers began to use CEA is that every child finds meaning in certain ones of what we call building blocks of thinking or tools of learning, and others find others that are more significant for them. And it will vary depending on what they're trying to study, what they're trying to learn, if they're dealing with a relationship, interpersonal problem with other people, all of the different settings. Even
because that's all part of thinking. So I know this big word, and the people who are out there listening at Strong at Home, I'm going to put this up here again so we can see that big word at the top of the slide. Meta-strategic. Can you unpack just meta-strategic for us a little bit? And so those who are not professional educators may have a better understanding of what in reality is a pretty simple concept.
Well, meta means to get above. So often a more common term is metacognition, which means thinking about your thinking. But meta-strategic places the emphasis on the strategies that you might use. So you think about learning strategies as they apply to whatever you're trying to do, and then you adapt them to meet personal challenges. And I can't emphasize the personal enough. There's not one right way to adapt a strategy. There's not one thing that works for math and another for social studies, or writing something. It all depends on the person and what's significant for them and what they may have picked up at an implicit level without anyone giving them labels. They may have picked up certain strategies that really work with them, but not be able to manipulate them very well because they don't have a way to carry them around with a good label. But they have to do with thinking primarily, but also what's often left out, particularly in expert strategies taught in schools, is strategies for dealing with and understanding your feelings and for motivating your behavior, because that is just as important as when we looked, if you saw the earlier series on what is thinking, feelings and what motivates your behavior are right there with thinking. They're not separate. They're not something we deal with or just say, get it under control and get back into thinking. They're always there. And they're either more of the focus or they're at the margin, but they're always there.
Always there. And I want to draw our attention back to another word that's in the title of this slide. It is an ability and an ableness to do this. And one of the things that has already struck me about meta-strategic knowledge is that anyone can learn this ability, because here at Sail Away, in our micro schools and in our homeschool programs, we have children of all intellectual ability levels. And from my experience, the ability to adapt meta-strategic knowledge is not based on your IQ, which is the kind of intelligence, what people think about. Are they really smart? I mean, there are a lot of people a whole lot smarter than we are. Their brains were created and the way that their neurons and the networks are configured can think of things well beyond what I can. But every single child and adult has the ability to acquire this knowledge, which is, I think, really key in understanding this meta-strategic. Don't let that big word throw you off. It's very specific that it is thinking above everything. It's like the 3,000-foot view of your own ability to think and to learn. And you can think about how you want to learn. And as Dr. Greenberg said, putting them into the practical everyday life. And that's what I think is so important for parents and other caregivers who are wanting to be strong at home in every situation for their child, is that they want to be able on their own to help situations at home, whether it's with homework or learning or with chores or family interaction or planning a vacation. That how are some of the other specific ways that we can adopt the meta-strategic learning or knowledge in families' daily lives?
Yeah.
there are, I guess, that one of the ways that Dr. Greenberg has developed the cognitive enrichment advantage, and it is, as you were saying, Dr. Greenberg, that there's a way of talking about making evident these rules of learning, because these meta-strategic knowledge has been part of the hidden rules. Would you agree with that?
Yes. It's so important to have this shared vocabulary so you can talk about them. It's like if you had a briefcase, but the handle's broken on it, it's a lot harder to carry it around. You need that handle or that shoulder strap. And the shared vocabulary allows you to then, in your thinking, to be able to sum it up into one of the building blocks of thinking or one of the tools. So you can begin to manipulate them and choose what you need for yourself in a given situation. Or if you're working with a child as a family member or a teacher, you can help the child to begin to explore some of the building blocks of thinking, tools of learning that might be helpful. Now, one thing we're going to look in a minute at the labels for those, well, there they are. You might go, oh my gosh, some of these words for young children or children that have moderate to severe learning problems are going to be way too hard. And what we found in one of our projects is that they're not at all, as long as you explain to children. They love to learn new words. Just like supercalifragilisticexpialidocious is something that anyone that's saying Mary Poppins knows. And young children are very proud to be able to say that. And what we found that went even deeper, we were a little worried in working with younger children, like if you look over at understanding feelings and go down to almost the last one, you see feeling of competence. And we were very concerned, would this be at all meaningful to young children? Would they develop strategies? And we found amazingly that they did, and rather quickly, once they understood what it was talking about. The emphasis is on understanding the feelings that would lead to you becoming competent, which means you can do the action that will lead to better learning. Not just having confidence or high self-esteem is not enough. You've got to feel competent about being able to learn math, even if you're struggling with it.
Absolutely.
If you found you could do better with reading and use some strategies for that, then you can find a way to use strategies that you need for learning math too. So it's competence is a real important piece. And that's
yeah, and I do want to reinforce what in our experience here at Sail Away has been that young children, and any children, as a matter of fact, any child and adult, when you are feeling something and you don't understand it, I believe that causes frustration. I have a 2-year-old grandson right now, and he knows what he wants, and yet he cannot express or communicate to us what it is. And when we finally are able to get to the point that we understand, oh, he just wants another cherry tomato and not something that we think is much more different or maybe unsafe, then that changes the whole environment and the whole atmosphere. And the same thing happens when children and adults learn about meta-strategic knowledge. That gives them, and especially the vocabulary, because the vocabulary gives them a way of communicating with others as well as with themselves. Because when you understand yourself and you can describe it, that allows children and adults to function more successfully, because I would say, Kathy, that what that does with the shared vocabulary is it decreases stress, because there's a lot of stress when you can't communicate. And I know families, especially those during the COVID-19 crisis, with children and adults at home unexpectedly, that there may have been some areas where they were feeling things or experiencing things, and they needed a way of communicating that And they would fall into one of these areas of either a building block or a tool. One of those areas could have helped them resolve that situation. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. We need a way to be able to approach something that is a stumbling block to turn it into a stepping stone. And and sometimes we need some help from someone else, as long as that help isn't to say, I've got the right way. Of course, at first, as you're beginning to develop this repertoire, this body of knowledge about meta-strategic thinking, then you do need someone to help you go, this is what awareness of self-change is all about. This is what it means to make comparisons. But rather quickly, you need to say, now, how could you use it in another setting? Something we call bridging. So you look to see, how can you use it in tomorrow's math class? How can you use it when you get home and you're planning a party? How can you use it, and why would you need to use it to read a story and answer questions about the story?
Well, I really want to know more about specifically each one of these building blocks and tools. So we don't have time today. Actually, we've run over again, tend to do that. And Dr. Greenberg, will you come back and do some conversations with me to explain to our viewers at Strong at Home a little bit more in detail about these building blocks and tools and how they can apply them at home, and maybe even encourage their schools to help begin a conversation about meta-strategic knowledge?
I would love to do that, Brenda. I look forward to it.
Thank you. And we're going to end today, as we always do here at Strong at Home, because each session we hope and pray is a blessing to you, and that the Lord would bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Peace to you, Kathy, and I will look forward to seeing you very, very soon.
Thanks, and also to you and everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.